Hello my brothers and sisters of the Order, welcome back to the Order. I'm Celtic Templar, and today y'all, we're actually going to be doing a what if video. Now this what if video is actually one I wanted to do long in the past, and as such I asked y'all in the community area if Texas should be its own country, and whopping majority of y'all said no. And such, I do have to put this out here. One major thing y'all don't realize though is the history in Texas compared to the truth and the fiction that of which we're reading in our schools. Now, many of you might automatically start saying, Templar, what do you mean truth and fiction? Simply, the information that we understand of our modern day is that Texas wanted to join the Union. Simply, no, actually. Now, many of you would automatically start saying, Templar, you're wrong. Texas wanted to join the Union, right? No. In fact, Texas had no other choice. But the thing is, Texas didn't ask to join the Union. We actually asked originally to be allies, or in this case, allied coalition. Mainly like what you might understand of modern day military tactics. In fact, a major example of this can actually be seen with none other than the 4th Texas president, St. John's, who of which actually tried to come up with an idea for Texas to live in the long future, in which this could easily be seen when the comes to the fact on how Texas and the Union were trying to understand major political roles. Texas was wanting to stay fully independent from the United States military and government. However, in major forms, there are two types of beliefs. There is the United States belief, and then there is the Texas truth. Now, what do I mean by Texas truth? Simple. I had to go to the Daughters of Texas to get this information, and I got this way back then when I was 10 years old. And even then I knew that Texas never wanted to join the Union. It was actually illegally annexed by the United States. Now, I hear many people already asking this. Templar, how can the Union illegally annex another said country or region? Simple. War. In fact, Texas is a good example, or as well, another example could also be the kingdom or country of Hawaii, and as well the kingdom or country of the Philippines, in which were illegally part of the United States. Fully annexed, Texas had no other choice to become a united part of the United States and become a state in the first place, because the United States viewed it as starting the war. Now, let's actually go back in history. One to the major following, Texas won its independence in April 21st of 1836. And in such, on that date, Texas won its major independence against Mexico at the Battle of San Jacinto. Sam Houston and Santa Anna signed a said treaty, signing over land to the Texas government. That land would look like this. Mexico, on the other hand, pretty much didn't view this, especially the Mexican government. The Mexican government were kind of idiots. Now, before I even get any further, this is not a roasting of the said Mexican government and all that. It's not I'm not trying to attack them, but you gotta understand the Mexican government was the problem. Mexican people, not the problem. The problem is, the Mexican government was heavily liberalized, or in this case, centralized, meaning all the power goes to the government, not the people, in which Texas wasn't the only region in Mexico that was trying to fight for its independence. There was also the Republic of Rio Grande, and as well a couple hundred others. Texas won its full independence, and as such claimed all this land, signed by none other than Santa Anna. However, Santa Anna and the Mexican government declined this, and as well disapproved of the said treaty entirely, especially when Sam Houston created the said Houston Agreement with Native American tribes, such as Texas would actually look like this, and such, Texas' full claim, and then there was also the territory that we added. that territory would belong to Native Americans. Problem is, Mexico viewed this as America or the Republic of Texas, or anybody can easily claim it. In other words, Mexico kind of viewed, well, they gave rid of it, so we're going to claim it. That was not how it was supposed to be. Problem is, Mexico started the conflict all entirely. And in fact, when we take a look at American history, it's stated that Texas joined the Union in the year of 1846. However, this is not exactly true. Texas actually joined the Union in actually of 1848, mainly because of us being forced to join the Union after the said Mexican-American fiasco. And as such, one major reason behind this was because of the fact that Texas asked for aid. Now, what was this? Well, for example, Texas asked for military and financial aid, and pretty much, well, from the United States in 1846. Reasons were because of debt and conflict, mainly with Mexico, or the Mexican government. And the fact is, Mexico should have actually stopped when they were ahead, because this area was still claimed by Texas, and the fact is, Mexico had no right to claim land in Texas. Now, before anyone starts saying, but Templar, this was their view, they had every right to. No, they did not, because one, it actually can easily be seen with the documents signed by none other than Sam Houston and Santa Anna. In fact, the loser doesn't get to keep any form of land that in which they believe is theirs. Meaning, whatever land Texas won, for example, since Texas won the war, they can claim as much land as they wanted. And the fact is, Mexico lost the war, meaning they don't get to say who actually keeps the land in Texas. So in fact, Mexico was playing the sore loser as a big idiot. Now, pretty much when it comes down to this though, in 1800s or and such, during the year of 1846, the United States forces, well, sent in a group of said military advisors and as well sent financial aid to Texas in order to help the Texas people. Problem is though, one later event later happened. Mexican forces attacked Union forces at the said Rio Grande River, and the war started. In fact, the United States blames both Texas and Mexico, mainly because, well, one major thing, the United States saw this as a major disputed land claim, when in such there was no dispute. And in fact, Texas even sent this information and document to the United States Congress, informing them about all this entire endeavor. Problem is, America wasn't wanting to listen. So in fact, Texas got screwed over with Mexico. All because the Mexican government were a bunch of idiots, thinking that they could easily walk in and claim the land. When in fact, Texas fought against Mexico for 10 long years soon after our independence. And the thing is, even when Texas became a full country in 1836, we were actually recognized as a country by not just the United States, but also Canada, as well as Britain, France, Spain, but not Mexico. Why? Mexico simply thought, oh, it's just a rebel union, it will fall in about a decade or so. The only reason we fell was because Mexico actually decided to invade us 10 years straight. Mexico did not know when to give up, and as such, Texas had no other choice but to ask the United States for help. Problem is, though, when it comes down to this time in history, it does not end well down in the long run, especially for Texas. Soon after the said Mexican-American War, it stated that Texas lost major amounts of land, such as, well, its mining resources areas, and as well Native American land. This did not end well between Texans and Native Americans, mainly with the Apache and Comanche who committed type of guerrilla warfare on innocent civilians, because the United States didn't recognize the Native American tribes in Texas. Since the Texas Republic is no more, their idealism is no more, their laws are no more, and as such, the United States puts its own laws into action. Problem is, this idea caused the problem in the said, well, Indian wars in Texas. And the Indian Wars in Texas lasted a long time until 1858. See where this is going? This is not going to end well for Texas. And the problem is, this is why Texas started to side more and more with the Confederacy, seeing as a chance to get out of the Union. However, one major thing also happened is that Texas was actually forced to pay off a major debt to the Union, which was fully paid off in 1858. Problem is, the United States never fully ended the debt, meaning they kept increasing it with each year that went on. And the fact is, Texas is its own country. It's just illegally annexed still to this day. As well, Texas was even forced to become a full slave state when Texas actually was a major anti-slave state or anti-slave country. In fact, the only areas that slavery was seen in Texas was east of Sam Houston City, or in this case, as we call it today, Houston City. So, why? Simple. Abolitionism. And the fact is, the majority of people coming to Texas were not from the South, but actually from the North, and as well from abolitionist countries, mainly from Germany, being one of the major ones. As well, there was also major Catholics actually living in the region, especially from Mexico, who of which actually, well, wanted to live in the Republic of Texas, seeing as well they don't have that highest taxes as Mexico did. So what major thing actually happened in this timeline? Why did Texas be forced to be part of the, well, slave state design? Simple. Just because it was south of the Mason-Dixon line. In fact, here is that Mason-Dixon line, that of which we see crossing over. That line is what destroyed Texas. The thing is, it took off that major top end where we see Oklahoma today. And the fact is, the rest of that land below that Mason-Dixon line should have still belonged to Texas. Problem is, that was part of our debt to the Union that we had to pay off. And the fact is, we couldn't exactly get it back. So, how was Texas supposed to, well, pay off the debt? Simple. We actually had to become a slave state. Not exactly the brass bulbs in the box of the Union, if you ask me. However, major reason I can already hear people asking, but Templar, Texas had slaves in it during the time of the Texas Republic. Yes, but the thing is, we fought against it for 10 long years. Problem is, the majority of the said Texas delegates were all slave owners. And the fact is, we couldn't exactly get rid of them because, one, they were the richer designed groups of politics. In other words, it'd be kind of like kicking out each of the said committee members in Congress, and such, we want to get rid of them. Problem is, we can't because, well, we need them. See my point? So, why is it that Texas had to be staying like this? Simple. It had to stay like this until an endeavor. Problem is, Texas in its form of slavery could have ended in the 1850s if it never joined the Union. But we'll get to that very soon. But yes, all because of this reason, Texas later joins the Confederacy mainly as a reason to get out of the Union. Not because they sided with slavery, but because they hated the Union government so much. In fact, I actually covered this on one of my other videos on why Texas fought in the American Civil War. If any of y'all want to see that, I highly recommend doing so. But now many of you might also be getting, but Templar, isn't Texas incredibly today with being part of the Union? You say that now, but the thing is, Texas today, especially because of some idiot, Texas is this close to starting to secede from the Union. And the thing is, we have every right to do so. In fact, our economy would be the 10th largest in the world. Pretty much in front of Canada and South Korea and slightly behind Brazil. And the thing is, Texas' economy would be booming compared to the rest of the United States. Now, there's also stated the perfect plan idea. The perfect plan idea was nicknamed by none other than the 11th President of the United States, President James Polk, who actually wanted to claim land in, well, part of Mexico, mainly land in California, and as well other areas. However, in this part of reform in history, Mexico denied the United States to buy it. However, the Mexican-American War, in other words, the sparks in such as the lands of California and Texas, caused the Texans, well, pretty much the idealism to, well, claim the land automatically. So the United States kind of claimed it as a, what you might call a war trophy. Yeah, kind of asinine, I know. Now, in this type of such, though, there is actually the stated idealism that what if Mexico went with it? What if Mexico actually allowed the United States to buy the land? Well, simple. There would actually be no war, but I think I might need to get to that some other time. For one, this would not just mean that Texas would be fully safe. So, yeah. But maybe we should get right into the alternate history, shall we? Okay, it's an alternate 1846. One major thing that actually happens still is the war still begins. The Mexican-American War, mainly because the major fact is Texas still asks for aid, both in material and as well in forms of military manpower and as well of said money. And in doing so, America doesn't blame Texas for actually the said event with Mexico, but blames the Mexican government. In doing so, Mexico loses more land than it does in our own timeline. And as well, it loses more land to Texas and the United States. Texas and the United States form a major union or a major allied coalition in order to fight against the said, well, Mexican government. Texas keeps the lands of eastern New Mexico, part of Oklahoma, Kansas, and Wyoming. And as well, it also ends up having, well, Colorado split in half. However, Texas can end up claiming the lands of the Rio Grande Republic. Now, if now you know what this is, it is the lands of Coahuila and as well Nuevo Leon and Tamaulipas, of which formed the said, well, Rio Grande Republic, and of which had major alliances with the said Republic of Texas, and actually viewed their idealisms as same as their own country. So in such, I could actually see these two actually getting along very fine and very well. Now, Texas might even claim the lands of the said Yucatan. Reason being, it could actually claim that land because of major separatist motivations. And in fact, there's even the old saying of the Texas Federation group, then in which actually even had alliances with the said rebels. So, we don't know if that's true or not, but I could actually see this probably happening. But Yucatan might be on its own as a separate country on its own. But we don't know. It's still a good thought. Now in such, Texas still claims these major lands, and as well, the United States would end up claiming the lands of said western New Mexico, Arizona, as well as Nevada, Utah, California, West Colorado, part of Wyoming, and which would later claim the lands of the said Chihuahua, Soraya, and as well Baja California. In other words, all of northern Mexico now belongs to either Texas or the United States. This major in scene I can actually see is one major reason. The United States wants to actually, well, claim more land, and as well also to make sure to claim land for both the United States major forms to actually, well, slave states and as well also non-slave states. Meaning, the United States claims more land in its own general time. And as well, the United States actually views Texas as a major ally to fight against Mexico just in case if Mexico ever decides to come back. However, if we know from one major form in our timeline, Mexico's government and military were very weak, and in such were mostly like a paper tiger, as they say. However, the lands of northern Mexico might actually become new slave states. In fact, there was a major form in time in history that we actually saw the said New Mexico territory somewhat become near identical to that of a slave state. As well could actually be seen also with said Southern California, who of which were wanting to separate and become known as the Colorado. Nope, not that Colorado, different Colorado. Yeah, separate union. So what actually happened? Simple. It did not pass through, and the fact is, California remained a free state, and a union. And now it has a second added layer of land to its farther south. So what majorly happens out of this? Simple. The United States might claim the land in northern part of Mexico, and as such, it could actually see the, well, northern lands that which was taken from Mexico, probably in the Union would be nicknamed the New Mexico Territory, while the lands that which are part of the border of Texas and as well north of the New Mexico Territory would have probably actually be known as the Arizona Territory. This is just my best thought, since it's point in history didn't come to fruition, it's hard to say what this might end up looking like. However, one major thing still happens in history. The Civil War still happens, mainly because, not because of slavery, but because of one major reason. Because of the transactions and as well the said embargoes, slavery as well as was only like 1 or 2% of the reasons. But the major reasons were majorly because of, well, taxation, embargoes, and worse. So what could end up happening? Well, I still see the major timeline in history happening in entirety. However, without Texas, the Confederacy is probably doomed. For one, without Texas being part of the Confederate Alliance, it's actually stated that Texas would have actually probably sided with the said Union. Majorly, probably to get rid of the major debt it had with the Union. So in such, it would probably end up aiding against the said Confederate forces. And the fact is, without Texas, it doesn't give its manpower, it doesn't give its said resources of food and, well, said ammunition. And the fact is, without Texas, there is no major Western front in the Union, meaning there is no conflict in Southern California, the New Mexico Territory, or any of that we see in our modern timeline. Meaning, without Texas being a major thorn in the side of the Union, Texas is a major ally to the Union. And in such, it might actually view this chance to actually end the idealism of, well, slavery in general, probably by 1858 is when our best obvious timeline is, or 59. Majorly because it sees a rivaling and kind of conflict in said Union. So majorly, I could actually see the major form in history happening all in general. Texas would probably attack the said Confederates along the said, well, areas of Louisiana and Arkansas, and as well help aid in military endeavors against the said Confederates. Now, if we take a look at our own timeline, the city of Vicksburg fell in 1863. Why does this matter? Simple, the Anaconda Plan. The reason that Anaconda Plan actually finally defeated the backbone of the Confederate forces was because they were no longer receiving any supplies from Texas. In fact, the major food and resources were majorly coming from Texas itself. Without Texas, the Confederacy probably falls in an alternate 1863 or 1864, meaning an extra year or two in the Union for it to actually rebuild. Now, does this mean that Abraham Lincoln isn't assassinated? No. For one, I could still see that probably accidentally happening in his timeline. With this war ending in 1863 and 1864, the United States probably ends up, well, getting rid of the debt with the said Texas. And such, Texas no longer has a debt to the Union, and in such, the United States and Texas probably form a major allied coalition. Meaning, whenever the United States actually is growing, so does the Republic of Texas. And as such, one major thing I could also see from this, in order to actually, well, both be a added support to Texas and a little bit of a rest for the United States might give the northern lands of Mexico to the Republic of Texas, mainly that of the New Mexico Territory that I just mentioned. So what would this mean? Well, simple. The United States has a major border against, well, Mexico, while Texas has new land that actually stretches towards the said Pacific. One major deal of this could actually be endeavor to said mining resources, especially in our own present time. In fact, if now you all know in history, Mexico and Texas actually had what you might call some form of mining resources in such as areas, such as parts of New Mexico and as well northern part of Texas, such as in the very Rocky Mountains. So in fact, silver and gold are probably mined out of here, probably coal, and as well other materials. One major thing that could end up happening in our own major timeline is to the fact that this actually leads to major alliance, probably even to this day. However, one major thing could end up changing in the major long run. Simple, to the major fact of politics. Majorly, 2 American presidents who in which were actually born in Texas would not be presidents of the United States, but probably presidents of Texas. That would be none other than Dwight D. Eisenhower and as well Lyndon B. Johnson. And in fact, I could actually see this somewhat working. For one, Texas actually fully supported Dwight D. Eisenhower and his ideals, Now, majorly down the long run, Texas was originally Democrat, but switched to Republican down the line for a major reason. After Lyndon B. Johnson got in office, Texas kind of lost its support for Lyndon B. Johnson. Majorly because we originally liked him once, but we didn't do it for him, we did it for JFK, which is kind of why we started to vote for Nixon. So majorly form into that, I don't see Lyndon B. Johnson staying as president for long. In fact, he probably only serves one term. Now, does this mean JFK survives? Probably not in our assassination attempt, because one, Texas would still have a major unification with the said Republic of Texas and the said United States. So what could end up happening? Simple. JFK still dies when visiting to the allies of the said United States. So, majorly, Texas loses a major ally and actually gains major enemies. One could probably be separatist type groups in the said Republic of Texas, or as well in parts of communist idealism, when in fact Texas was a major red state, meaning a major Republican state, and a major hater of communists, or in this case, socialists. So what could end up happening in this major timeline in our history? Simple. The major form in history could actually lead down the long run that Texas still, no matter what, I could always see this happening, Texas would emerge as a major Republican country. It still holds to the idealisms of the old ideal of the Republic, though I could actually see two Democratic parties. One of the Republican-type Democrats and the, well, liberal Democrats. While there would be Republicans in Texas, but would be somewhat smaller compared to the big Democrats. And in fact, before anyone starts saying, but Templar, I could see this as a major, Democrat-type country because of Mexico. Well, that's what you think, but keep in mind, Texas was originally a Democrat state in the Union. So majorly form, it would actually be a major Republican country by this point. And in fact, I could actually see every Texas-born governor in Texas being president of the Republic of Texas. Or in this case, by this point in time, I could actually be seeing it even named something else, probably the United Republic. Seeing it as a United Republic of, well, more than one republic, such as pretty much of three. Such as the Republic of Texas, the Republic of Rio Grande, and as well the Republic of New Mexico, who of which did actually not like the said people of Mexico, or the Mexican government. Even though in our timeline this could actually be seen, I still actually understand there could be major struggles along the way. For one major form, whatever time Texas would actually be engaged in a war, the United States would be right along with them. The same could be seen with, the said United States would be in a war, Texas would actually start to ally with them as well. Major form in this is seen also in World War I. If we take a look in World War I, the said document that was sent to Mexico is captured by the said British command. They send it to the United States. However, in this alternate timeline, it's now sent to both Texas and the United States, who end up fighting against Germany in World War I. And in fact, this would still lead to World War II and many other countless battles. However, one major thing you could also see is, well, the events with Pancho Villa. Now, when we take a look at Pancho Villa, for example, he actually started to declare such and such rebellions in parts of Mexico. Now, if we take a look at our own timeline, I could probably see this actually happening still. However, if none of y'all understand, Pancho Villa attacked innocent civilians along the border of Texas, which Texas governor was actually, at the time, was asking the United States for military aid in order to stop this attack on said civilians. America didn't believe it until it was too late. So, what would happen in this alternate timeline? Texas would be ready and probably put down Pancho Villa's attack, and they would end up helping out Mexico to actually end the said conflict. And probably end up rebuilding Mexico so that way it could be prepared for another conflict. So, majorly in this type of form in history, Mexico and Texas form a military and alliance bond, one in which probably still lasts today. And in fact, in the major long run, I can actually see Texas and the United States being in major conflicts even to this day, such as even with the 9/11 attacks, and as well even with the said conflicts in part of modern day history. However, if we take a look at, well, most recently during 2020 to 2022, we see major problems already occurring with the relationship of the United States and Texas, even in our present timeline. In fact, if we to understand in history, or in fact, none of you actually heard, well, Joe Biden actually cut off every supply line and as well every, pipeline in Texas, stating that it would actually be better to give them jobs that which were different. Problem is, Texas needed that pipeline, and as well, it also would actually helped Texas. Without that, Texas entirely doesn't have a said major bank. So, in this alternate timeline, Texas doesn't cut off that pipeline, and as well, there are more jobs in Texas than there are in the Union. Now, at first, I could probably see Texas and Mexico having somewhat of a border wall type system in order to get rid of any narcotic drugs, especially during the said 80s. Especially in the 1980s and 70s, there were major drug trades, and as well, cartels actually had tunnels underneath the said ground in a modern-day border, which is why the wall was being built in the first place by Trump, and as well, other type of delegates in Texas are trying to continue the construction of the Great Wall of Texas. Majorly, in such, to this type of form, the Texas wall, that of which would actually, be seen, would actually stop any narcotic drugs from actually entering Texas through land, and in such, there would even be major problems for even, drug smugglers, even if they were trying to get into said parts of the United States or the Republic of Texas, even by flight or by boat. Seeing to the fact that both the Coast Guard and Air Force actually would end up, seizing them endeavor. So majorly in this type of form, Texas and the United States could actually be majorly, drug-free mostly. Well, mostly. But one major thing could end up actually happening. One, with the United States falling into anarchy as we see in our own timeline, Texas would be rising from the said 2020 events and immediately becoming richer than the United States. In fact, in this alternate timeline, it probably wouldn't be, labeled as number 10, but probably be labeled as number 9 or by number 8 in our standards. In fact, maybe even number 7. Majorly because the United States was not the problem. And in such, Texas actually entirely becomes a new major country. One in which rivals that of the United States. Now many of you might wonder, but what about the Cold War? Simple. Even with the Cold War system in our entire endeavor, the Soviets would still fall no matter what, and the fact is, the United States and Texas are major allies. And the fact is, there is still major alliances with the Republic of Texas and the Union. So much so, I doubt the said United States would probably fall until probably in our modern timeline, such as we see in today. However, I could end up seeing a major refugee crisis, especially from California, New York, and said Detroit, trying to make their way into Texas. However, even to this day, Texans don't want that idealism in the Republic, so I doubt that they would even allow them into the border. Even if the said Californians and such, or anybody in part of the United States, has a said plane ticket. Such and such, I don't actually see the United States being able to actually, destroy the reputation of the Republic's voting system. And the fact is, Texas is a major united type of, its own form of united country. And the fact is, even today, Texas itself is starting to view the idealism of being a separate country from the Union. Do I support it? Most indefinitely. For one, us Texans kind of don't want to be part of the Union in the first place, majorly because they actually are the one reason that screwed us over in the major form in history. However, there are many things I can actually see that it can end up happening in the major long run. For one, I doubt that Theodore Roosevelt would have any Rough Riders at San Juan Hill, because those Rough Riders were all from Texas, especially here in San Antonio. The major thing is, though, without Texas, there is no Dwight D. Eisenhower nor Lyndon B. Johnson part of the United States government. In fact, before anyone starts saying, oh, but Templar, you're forgetting the Bushes, they wouldn't be part of the United States presidency. Actually, they would. For one, they weren't born in Texas. Saying the fact, I could actually see Texas becoming a fully independent idealistic nation. one in which our own governors would be the major presidents. So in fact, our own governor right now would be our major president of the Republic of Texas. Do I believe that should be a good idea? Most endeavor, so maybe I should tell Abbott that we should start seceding. Ugh. But anyways, y'all, hopefully you like this video. Like and subscribe for more. If y'all have any ideas for another what-if scenario, let me know that in the comments below. I'll be happy to get right into it. Now, I hear many of you already asking this. Templar, why did you actually start this? Simple. I've seen a lot of videos and that actually cover things that which I wanted them to do, but they didn't do it correctly. Or as well, they aren't doing ones I ask them to. Such as, well, like what if the Normans failed at the Battle of Hastings? What if Scotland was conquered by Rome? What if Rome failed to conquer Gaul? Or what if Julius Caesar survived? In fact, there are many ideas I want to put out here. So, if any of y'all have any ideas, let me know down in the comments below. I'll be happy to get right into them. Anyways, guys, it's been Celtic Templar. Hopefully see y'all in the next one. Have a great day.